Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our first Sunday service of the new year. For those of you who I'm seeing for the first time this year, I hope that 2025 got off to a wonderful beginning for you and your family, and hope that this year will be a great year for all of us. And hopefully for our country and for the entire world, actually. It's so nice to see all of you here, and Jesus, really quite a lot of people who are joining us for our January Shotsuki. And as Irene read off the names of the people that we honor today, I remember so many people who were very valuable members of our temple, and it is always a wonderful opportunity for us to remember family members and friends who passed away before us, and to think about everything that we received from them. Today we observe our January Shotsuki Memorial Service, and I can remember, many of those friends who passed away during the month of January in our long history. It is through this kind of occasion that we can most benefit from the guidance given to us by the Buddha-Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, and to give us the opportunity to reconfirm the preciousness of the lives that we live. In Japanese, as you know, the New Year is referred to as Shogatsu or Oshogatsu, and never really thought of what that means, but Sho is a character which can be translated as true or proper or correct, and Katsu means month. So I just assume that it means the first month of the year. This past week, I picked up an old book of writings of Reverend Kibun Kimura, who was a longtime Rinban of the Fresno Nishonganji Betsuin, contemporary and a friend of my father. And before he retired, with help from his friends, a book was published in English called Why Pursue the Buddha? He was a Nishonganji minister, but owed much of what he knew of Buddhism to Higashonganji teachers, especially the Reverend Dae Kaneko. There was one article in the book about welcoming in the new year, and this is what I found out the true meaning of Shogatsu or Oshogatsu. And he says that it came from a term, Shusei no Tsuki. Japanese can be difficult because the same character can have different pronunciations depending on what other characters come before or after it. So Shusei no Tsuki means the month to make adjustments, to make amends for problems, deficiencies we may have caused in the previous year. The sei of Shusei is also pronounced cho, and so Reverend Kimura says that that's where the word oshogatsu comes from. The word for the service that we had last week on New Year's Day is called shusho-e. And even though it's pronounced differently, the first two characters, shusho, is the same as shusei of Shusei no Tsuki, the month in which to make amends. And these are examples of what makes the Japanese language so difficult, but at the same time, so fascinating as well. So now, according to Japanese Buddhist history and culture, is the time to take stock of our lives, to think about all that we could have done better last year, and to make adjustments. From our Buddhist perspective, it is to think about how we've dropped off the path and make adjustments in our everyday lifestyle. Most importantly, to get back on the path of the Buddha-Dharma. When we are honest with ourselves, we can compare ourselves to Shinran, our founder, Shinran Shonin, to think about how he came to the conclusion that he is a being filled with blind passions, a being living in a self-centered life driven by ego, bound by the three poisons of greed, anger, and stupidity. My friend, Reverend Ram Kobata, used to talk about this, and he would say it would be easy to remember that it's GAS, gas, bound by the three poisons of greed, anger, and stupidity. But it's not simply to make resolutions and to work on one or two problem areas of our lives, but it is to take stock of the entirety of how we are living our everyday lives. Buddhism, as most anyone knows, is a teaching meant to lead us to enlightenment. The Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, who lived over 2,500 years ago, maintained until the end of his life that he was a human being just like us, and that the only thing that distinguished him from other human beings is the fact that he was enlightened, or using a word that is more commonly used and easier to understand, he was awakened. And so he claimed that any human being had the same potential to be awakened like him. So what does it mean to be awakened? The opposite of being awake, of course, is to be asleep. If we were to use a more concrete example, it would be that the Buddha is sitting in a room with all the lights on, while we, who are unawakened, are sitting in a room with no lights in pitch darkness. Still, though, that doesn't really give us a good understanding of what awakening is. Another way of looking at it is in using my own example. After reaching, now I'm at the age of 77, and from maybe when I was 50 years old or so, I started to have more and more trouble with my eyes. And one of the things was I never wore glasses until I got old, and I can see all of you. My ability to see far away isn't diminished much, but my nearsightedness has gotten worse and worse, and so I no longer bother with the fine print unless it's important. I have trouble reading the lyrics to the gathas in our service book. So an awakened view is like when like what someone with very bad eyesight would see when he puts on glasses. For most of us, though, we don't feel like our vision is muddy at all, at least not in the way that the Buddha talked about. We think we see life as it is, and we are living accordingly. Happiness to us is when the other person or persons agrees with how I think and what I do. Happiness is also getting what we want, like, say, maybe a new TV or a new car or something like that. And since we define happiness like that, we're often disappointed. Because we certainly don't always get what we want. At our Shushoe, our New Year's Day service last week, I talked a little bit about Shakyamuni Buddha, what Shakyamuni Buddha referred to as the causes of people's suffering. The first four: birth, illness, aging, and death. The reason why birth is there is because it initiates the suffering that we must endure in life. The others are self-explanatory. But he also listed four additional causes: suffering from not being able to be with people we love, having to be with people we dislike, not being able to get what we want, from the limitations of our physical and mental capacities, and from the limitations of our environment. So happiness is defined by how things go with me at the center of life, what we call a self-centered way of living. But we keep holding off asking what our real goals are, what can make us truly happy, because we're pretty much satisfied with the ways that things are. So then, what is the awakened view? What does it mean to become enlightened, to become a Buddha? Contrary to the expectations of some, it does not all of a sudden make the whole world beautiful. It's not like all of a sudden looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, so to speak. The awakened view is a turning inward of our eyes and seeing ourselves honestly. The goal of Buddhism, that which we call enlightenment, is, in more concrete terms, to come to truly understand who we are. The tendency is to see ourselves as being okay, as a matter of fact, as good, especially true nowadays when we hear about so much evil in the world today. We can't help but see ourselves as good people. So we see and try to show that good side. Of course, we all have that good side, and sweep under the rug any deficiencies. And because of that self-centered nature of human life, sometimes we don't even realize that there is a problem with our actions. It was some time ago when Dr. Michiro Ama was here in Los Angeles, and he has been involved with us for many, many years now. He did his graduate work at UC Irvine, taught at the University of Alaska for many years, and recently, not recently, but also taught at the University of Montana. And he led a minister's seminar one day, and one of the things he said was that for non-scholars, stories from Buddhism or stories that illustrate the teaching of Buddhism often are more effective than reading translations or discourses of difficult teachings. Those are important for academics, of course. I think I've been more of a storyteller throughout my career. Like my father, I could not aspire to be a scholar of Buddhism. And by the way, that's what my father told me, and it's not like I'm degrading him, but then he always said that I was never a good student. And so I would like to share a story with you, one that you may have heard before. This is a story of a mother with grown children. A son is married and lives very close to her and her husband. A daughter lives a few towns away. Both of them were fairly recently married. So one day she decides to go and visit the daughter because she's been worried about her. Is she happy? Is her husband nice to her? And so forth. So she arrives, and when she walks in, she discovers that the husband, her son-in-law, is washing the dishes. She thinks to herself, what a nice husband my daughter has. I'm so glad that she found the right person to marry. She stays for a while, and then she decides to go home. So just as she's about to reach her home, she decides to look in on her son just down the street. When she goes in, she discovers that her son is having to wash the dishes. Immediately she thinks, what a terrible, terrible wife my son has. I feel so sorry for him for not being able to find the right wife, making him wash dishes like that. When we hear the story as an observer, we can see the folly of the woman. She sees two men washing dishes. One is a great husband to her daughter, a husband who shares the household duties, and the other, her son, is the victim of a terrible wife. The only thing that changes is her position. In both cases, her primary concern is her children. So she's happy to see her son-in-law doing the dishes, thinking how fortunate her daughter is to have such a caring and supportive husband. When she sees her son doing the dishes, she thinks how unfortunate he is to have such a lazy wife who doesn't even do the dishes. And when we think about it, we do the same things all the time, but without the eyes of awakening, we fail to see that about ourselves. And that inability to see the faults and shortcomings of others, the faults and shortcomings of ourselves continues to create and maintain barriers that separate ourselves from others, that keeps us from feeling true satisfaction in our lives. Some time ago, I received a call from an old friend, someone who I haven't seen for probably over like maybe 20 years or so. And for the first few minutes, we caught up with what each other had been doing over the years. And then he told me, the reason for my call is to let you know that my father is dying, and I wanted to get your advice as to what I should do to prepare as the oldest son. So I explained to him that if we were in Japan, the oldest son, even if he's much younger than older sisters, would be totally responsible for everything that needs to be done. But here in the United States, most families don't uphold such traditions, and that oftentimes it's an older daughter that takes on that role even when a son may be older, or that the family gets together to make decisions in an American, more democratic way. I told him about some of the things to expect and also shared with him that if they decide to use the services of a mortuary like Fukui, that they take care of many of the legal responsibilities and other expert guidance on those matters, that there's even a booklet that they give out that explains everything. So after my explanation, he went on to say that he had not been close to his parents nor his siblings ever since he got married. The problem being that he was not Japanese American and that she was not Japanese American and that his parents hadn't approved. He has a son who's in his 20s and he's never really had the chance to get to know his grandparents. I actually performed the marriage ceremony for the two of them, and so I remember that tension that there was because of the parents' disapproval. He recently called his mother to tell her that he was there for her to help in any way, and she responded by saying to him, "We don't need your help." So it was apparent that he didn't call just to ask about guidance for funeral arrangements and so forth, but what he was really asking about was how could he revive the close relationship he had with his parents and siblings back when he was young. As I was listening to him, I was trying to think of some meaningful advice I could give to him, like even though it seems as if your mother doesn't love you, she really does. Or maybe if you make every effort to express your love and concern to them, that they will accept your sincerity and be able to let go of the past and restore the relationship. But somehow I knew that those would be the wrong things to say, and fortunately for me, his cell phone began to act up and we lost the connection. He called back right away to apologize and to thank me for my advice. I told him to feel free to call me back anytime, and realized that when he needed what he needed to do was just to talk, to share his frustrations, his pain with someone willing to listen. But whether it's the story about the family in Japan or the family of the friend who called, I realize I really don't know how to respond. I've been blessed with parents who have always supported me and have been happy with the choices that I've made in life. Well, maybe not all the time, like during those days in high school and college when I was rebelling against everything and worrying them so much. but my siblings and I have never been especially close, although, well, we're pretty close. But, and part of that is because we're separated by age. But I think we love and respect each other, so in comparison, I think that I've had it easy as far as my family is concerned. So I've been thinking about how I would respond to my friend, and I think it comes back to where we started. Buddhism helps us to truly understand who we are, to accept the negatives of ourselves as well as the positives. If there is a problem at hand, the tendency is to blame the other, but what Buddhism does is to ask, what was your role in the problem? Could it be that you are just as much at fault? And if so, what can you do to rectify the problem? I remember a talk by Alan Watts, who was a pioneer in spreading Zen Buddhism in the Western world. And one of the things that he talked about is that Buddhism would say that we have two types of consciousness. One he labels spotlight consciousness, and the other floodlight consciousness. When we think about the two, we see the spotlight as being very intense and narrowly focused. The floodlight, on the other hand, is wide and illuminates or takes in a much broader area. So he says we have both types, but today's societies has molded us to develop the spotlight consciousness very much more than the floodlight consciousness. So taking this idea, the mother in the story has spotlight consciousness because her view is centered on herself. It's coming out of her ego, and so what's good and bad is determined by how it affects her. So it's a very narrow view. Take the weather, lately it's been quite cool, and well, this year we haven't had a lot of rain, but I think that, I think that we're hoping that we'll have some, rainfall this winter. But I, think I often kind of complain about the weather. It's like too hot or too cold, or things like that. And that's kind of like my spotlight consciousness, that everything is judged according to how it affects me, rather than how it affects the world. As I grow older, I realize that my spotlight or my floodlight consciousness, able to see with my floodlight consciousness, I can say to myself, well, it's true that we're suffering from this cold and rain, but it's only temporary, and most of the year, most of the rest of the 51 weeks are great. And in addition to that, the floodlight consciousness enables me to see what it's like in other parts of the world, to see that the bad weather we have, although actually we've had really good weather, but if we do have some bad weather, it's nothing compared to other places throughout the world, places that are tornado prone, or places where snowpacks rise to roof levels, places where temperatures rise into the 120s and so forth. And so we have the opportunity, I think, to shift our focus and say that the search for truth, for awakening, cannot wait. Through self-reflection on an everyday basis, we begin to realize who we really are. We're encouraged to get out of that self-centered mode in which we use only our spotlight consciousness that says, as long as I'm okay, everything is okay, and begin to develop what we, kind of term the floodlight consciousness, which enables us to begin to truly appreciate life just as it is. This is the encouragement that we receive from Buddhism. It's the same encouragement that we receive from the family members, the ancestors that we honor here today. And I'd like to end my talk today by sharing with you a simple poem that I tried translating into English, written by a woman by the name of Wakako Takamura. She entitled her poem Reminiscing. Well, the translation goes something like this. Between experiences of pain and suffering, I enjoy wonderful moments of peace and tranquility. I don't know if it's the conditions of the moment that create that, or whether it's because my heart is settled and at peace. In either case, to be able to experience such peacefulness, awe, happiness, deep appreciation. Well, thank you all for joining us for our Shotsuki Memorial Service for January, and look forward to your continued support of our Higashonganji Buddhist Temple as we enjoy 2025 that we have, that we are now in, and hope that you all have a wonderful year and have a really, enjoyable year with your family, your friends, and everyone that we all live together with. Thank you all for coming again for our Shotsuki service for January, and look forward to seeing you again often throughout the year. So thank you all.